If I could go back and do it all again, I still would, because like you said, we rode the wave, we took the ride, we, went with the opportunities that we were given at that time. And I'm glad that we did.
Welcome to Life Unleashed,
the podcast all about creating the best life for you and your furry best friend.
If you're a dog mom on the go, juggling life, work, and the endless joys of being a dog parent, then you're in the right place. I'm Dani.
And I'm Nick.
And together with the incredible dog mom community from Tails Up Pup, we're here to share advice, stories, and the obsession we have over the love for our dogs.
Get ready to laugh, learn, and lean on each other, because life with your dog just got even more awesome.
We are taking it way back 4 years ago. Isn't that wild?
It really feels like it was not that long ago.
I feel like a pandemic happened. Most of us have never experienced a pandemic. We had no idea what was going to happen. And as small business owners, I feel like we are very commonly asked how it affected our small business and just our life. And I feel like in the grand scheme, we were affected just like everyone else, in the fact that there were rules and regulations on the news, and were we even going to be allowed to go to work and that type of stuff.
And getting all the supplies and things like that. But it's really interesting with something like this, when you're going through it, it's really hard to take the full picture of what's going on, because, things were changing and happening so fast. And it's only now that we can look back with hindsight to be take the full picture of what happened, kind of the whys behind everything and that stuff.
And it's wild that based on where you live is also how you are affected, because in Georgia, there were way less regulations. So we could still go to a grocery store, and I think that some people couldn't really do that the same way.
Well, I definitely know that the regulations let up a lot faster in Georgia than compared to where your mom lives in Pennsylvania. It's mask requirements there went on much, much longer than where we live.
Yeah. It was never even fully required at major places here.
But the biggest thing about things like this is the unknown when it's happening. I just remember so let's just kind of set the stage for what was happening. So this is 2020, February is when we moved into the office.
Yeah, we moved into the office in February. The world shut down and called it a pandemic in mid-March.
So for anyone that doesn't know, we started Tails Up Pup 2018 in our basement. We were there for roughly 18 months. And then we said, you know what? We need to take the leap, go get an office space, started looking for them.
It was Christmas when we started looking, because the day they were going to let us come and tour the office space we ended up leasing was when we were leaving for Pennsylvania. And they ended up not having a key, not letting us in. So we went and tried to peek through the window. And the guy was like, do you want to sign the lease? And we were like, we haven't seen it yet. And he's like, but you can make it your own. And I just didn't grasp the concept of what he meant. I'm like, no, we need to see it before we sign the lease. So we did not sign the lease then. We did look around. We shopped around.
We visited a bunch of different offices, but the one we found is
once he found the key and let us in.
We liked it. It was definitely needed a lot of work done.
Yes. So, a lot of people tear down walls and redo a bunch of stuff. We just did paint and flooring, and it completely changed it. It hadn't been dealt with in over 10 years. So we revamped it. It was a beautiful space. We did love it. But yeah, we signed the lease. We move in. Finally, it was Nick's birthday. So Valentine's Day, we finally move in. And
we were so excited to have a whole grand opening, a launch. That was going to take a little, I think we were planning that for April, actually. We literally made, I think, invitations.
Yeah, we did invitations. We did a whole Facebook thing. And we were really excited for our launch party. We were also really excited to hire people, because we had never hired anyone. That was the main reason we got the office space, was to hire people. And now
we started to hear on the news.
It was 3 weeks in that this thing was going on, and I don't know. At first, no one knew anything.
Well, I remember as things were coming out, I was like, oh, some people were saying this is going to be a big deal. Some people were not. And I remember thinking in my head, oh, this is not we had never lived through anything like this. So it was just oh, this is, something that's going to be relatively isolated, not going to be that big of a deal. It's very unlikely going to affect us. I remember that's what I thought at the time in February, maybe?
March.
Yeah, March.
They didn't announce it till March.
Right.
And so then I'm like, okay, well, we own the business. Like, we have the say, so it's not going to affect us because, like, we can make our own rules here. But I was wrong because we deal with supply chain and we order things. And that was probably the biggest, like, early impact was getting materials and supplies.
And just the idea that, like, people are not going to be able to go out and about, kind of like the shelter in place rules.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, oh my gosh, we have definitely built the online presence, but one of the main reasons that we opened the store was to have customers come in and shop, and we had literally set up an entire like storefront. And so it was like, the government is saying that people cannot go out and shop besides like the grocery store and like absolute necessities, essential workers, that's what they were called, right? So the essential workers could go out, but besides that, it was a shelter in place. And we're like, so we can't hire people because we're not essential, so that they wouldn't be able to come to work. Customers can't come to the office. And then, of course, because of a lot of the supplies that we use, those aren't essential either. We can't get stuff.
Yeah, so we ended up canceling our grand opening party because we put it off for so long because we were like, we still had no idea what was going on. And we were like, okay, this is going to pass by. Let's just hold off. And then we were like, okay, yeah, this thing has to be canceled. Like, no one can come in contact with anyone. So party canceled. We put off hiring, and we actually put off hiring for much longer because there was still so much unknown about how it was going to affect our business. And so even though what month did we start hiring? It was like months later.
It was a while later, but I just remember that feeling of like, oh my gosh, what did we do? We signed this 3-year office lease for a ton of money, and there's this thing that they're saying literally customers cannot come to your store. And one of the biggest premises that we had of like why we thought the store, besides hiring people, would be successful, we're like, we can build a place where people can come shop and we're going to get revenue that way. And they're basically telling us that is not going to be allowed, and who knows when that's going to come back. I remember being like, we're going to go out of business.
The first thing that we did to use our brains and our materials and our skills was to make masks. And I believe the idea really came from my mom, who is a nurse and needed masks because remember we sent them to her hospital.
But we have to set the stage for like, this is before everyone was making masks. So this was not like, obviously looking back now, everyone ended up making masks, and like, you probably knew 10 people that were making masks. They were all over Addison and everything. This is before any of that was going on.
Okay, Nick sews bandanas now, but at that time he had never touched a sewing machine. It was me, and if you know me, I do not have a sewing background, and I know how to sew a dog bandana, and that is it. So I had to learn how to sew a mask, and there weren't really there was one girl who had a tutorial. I don't even know why she had it. I don't believe it was like brand new. It was just like something that she had on her site. And that's what I remember watching. And we like printed off her template, and we started making masks with the fabric that we had for our dog bandanas. And we didn't have elastic to go around your ears, so we made ties out of our headband material.
Oh yeah.
And they were giant ties that you tied around your head. And that we made like a whole bunch of them, sent them to my mom's hospital, and they were so grateful because no one could get their hands on a mask. That was why people were making them, is because all of a sudden there was this like huge demand for medical grade masks, and there weren't enough for all of these workers. So they were allowed to have any type of mask as long as it covered their face. So ours didn't have any filtering in it, but the fabric at that time was known to be good enough, better than nothing.
Right.
And honestly, I say we did a great job. So anyways, we make these masks, and I took a picture and posted it on our Instagram, and we very quickly started selling a bunch of masks. We sold, did we get to 1,000?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
We sold so many masks, and that really was the first thing of okay, well, we don't know what's going to happen with our business, but we can at least do this for now because there's a demand for it. And we had cute fabrics. And that was the thing, with the supply chain, you couldn't even get a lot of fabric at that time because everyone was starting to buy it. And people were just like hoarding whatever, toilet paper was very hard to come by. So
you could find like the really weird like orange fabrics and things like that, but like your tradition, like I remember there was like months we couldn't get like black, navy,
the solid
pink,
colors
things.
we could not get.
We couldn't get those.
Yeah. I remember our watermelon mask was like a hot seller.
And then, of course, after we started having those out there, people started getting bandanas like with the matching mask. We had a combo set. Remember that?
They were doing combo sets. Like, who would have thought that?
I need a mask and I
match your dog.
And I want to match. That actually was one of the first things besides the headbands that was really like I would say popular in the matching.
And so eventually we did get our hands on some elastic. We had ties or elastic. You could choose your options. And we had lots of like fabric choices to come by. And so anyways, that was like the first thing. And that was pretty cool to look back and be like, wow, we had no idea what we were doing. And we just like, tried to pivot with the times and we made it through.
It really felt like we were in survival mode, trying to do whatever we could to pay rent at that time.
And the other thing that we've always done for our business was social media. And it's funny because, years later, I went back and I was like, when did we start the question of the day? Because that's just like our thing on Instagram stories. And it's like almost day one when I started that. It wasn't every single day that I was doing it, but it's funny. Like I have so many videos and I can go back and very, very early on, we were just always on stories, talking, doing the question of the day. And that's really how we grew our business, was on social media. And so come pandemic, we cannot leave the house really. We were going to the office, but it was just us. And so we were like creating so much content. And
no one else was leaving their house.
Yes. So everyone was on their phones or computers and everyone was consuming TikTok and Instagram were just becoming so big. No one had anything to do. They were so bored. And so they would go to these social media outlets and entertain themselves. So it was a great thing for us because we were creating all these videos and content and people were watching them. So our views skyrocketed and they stayed up for like 2-3 years. Only like basically this year they started to go down, and it's crazy because now everyone is back to work and back to social events and weddings and like everything has come back basically to its old normal. And so people are spending less time on Instagram and social media now. So we are seeing the effects of that now, but it was crazy how quickly we were ramping up and we, 100 times views were up. It was wild, and we spent a ton of time on our content because it's what was helping us. So the more content we put out, the more people were coming to our community and enjoying being a part of the Tails Up Pup family. And our sales did increase from that because people were on their phones, they were online shopping, and we were able to really actually grow our business a ton from early on in the pandemic. Pretty much
every single month, I remember we were like, this is our best month ever. And then this is the next best month ever. It was like our new record every single month. And it was just like, that was the opposite of what we expected to happen.
Right. And
particularly, we're a relatively seasonal business. Like fall and Christmas are busier. And so we had just come off of our busiest time. We moved in February. And so March and April, May are not quite the busiest. And it was like new record.
We
and
were breaking Christmas records. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And we ended up having our viral video in 2020, and it was just like our business was growing, and that's when we started feeling much more comfortable to hire and actually get more help. We were like, okay, now we are seeing it's not just a coincidence, it is a pattern. We're growing, we need more hands on deck. Let's you got to run with it when you have it, and that's kind of what we did. And so we hired employees and we started growing even more. And the past 3 years was basically growth on top of growth on top of growth. And it's wild to look back and think how far we've come and how much we learned from our business and how many people we wouldn't have met and got to be a part of the Tails Up Pup family if the pandemic didn't happen, because they, wouldn't have found us.
It's really interesting knowing like the outcome. You would think that you'd be able to predict it. Hindsight is always 20/20, as they say. And now knowing it, it's like, oh, of course, when people are forced to stay home, they're going to be on their phones more. They're going to online shop more, all this stuff. But at the time, it didn't feel that way. It's crazy how it played out.
Dogs bring people happiness all the time. And in that time when you couldn't leave your house and, the world was a sad and scary place, dogs are what we all had to lean on. And a lot of people got dogs during the pandemic because if they didn't have one, that was their time to, get to know them, train them. Like, you were at home with them all the time. So you had the ability to get a dog and make the life that you wanted with them. So a ton of people got dogs, which also helped us. And finding that happiness was, going out in your backyard and taking a cute picture of your dog or with your dog. So we received so many customer photos during that time. It was insane because, that was what was making people happy.
And there's limited options out there. So you can't go to events. You can't do these things. So it's like you said, I'm going to go in my backyard and hang out with my family and my dog.
Yeah.
Take some cute photos.
That was really fun. I feel like we're also seeing the effects of that now. People just spend less time doing that. So we receive a little bit less customer photos, and that's our favorite part. So hoping that makes a comeback. And, we definitely see customer photos still, especially for holidays and things like that. But it's not anywhere near what it was during that time.
So we covered 2020 and really I'd say into like 2021. But what you see also happen is the evolution of our business. There was also this new demand, not only for the bandanas and dog stuff, and this is when the embroidery really started to kind of take over, and that just is a whole nother segment of our business that I don't know that we would have been able to predict at all when we started out.
Yeah. I don't know. Did that really came like a little bit after people were, getting back in a groove a little bit?
I still feel like there's a little bit some pandemic related stuff with that.
Yeah. I mean, people were still looking for ways to, find happiness was really the true thing. And Holly has come to join us. Hello, Holly. Say, I bring everyone happiness. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it was something that the first item that we created that was a big embroidery thing for us were the custom like portraits of the dogs. And we don't sell that exact item anymore, but it basically was an outline of your dog. And I feel like that was like so cute, so fun. And like, it was a sweatshirt. And if you were lounging around at home or working from home, it was something comfy you could put on and like bring you happiness because your dog's with you, No,
that's totally true. Well, this just brings up and reminds me, this is more 2021, but speaking of lounging around at home, pajamas for us in 2021 were huge.
So if you've listened to some of our other podcasts or videos that we made, one of the biggest mistakes that we've made is buying a certain amount of pajamas was that 2022?
Yes. Well, so we sold a little bit so we sell pajamas because they match like for Christmas photos for your dog.
Photos.
That's why we
Christmas
sell
morning.
Yeah, that's why we sell pajamas. And it was, I think, it was pretty decent in 2020. It was really big in 2021.
I think it was really big in 2020.
Maybe it was 2020.
Yeah.
Then whatever the next year, we bought a lot more because we had 2 years of big growth in pajamas. And so, but then it just totally fell off the map.
And for my justification on probably why that happened is because by 2023, people were going to Target and Old Navy and these cheaper stores, and there's a lot of people who just want the cheapest thing, And so they were going to these stores now in person, just buying the cheapest thing that was in front of them and no longer coming to us for them. Where at 2020 and 2021, they had no option to go to the store. So they were buying online, and that's probably why that happened.
I also think that the supply chains for like those big companies, they were really struggling and couldn't get millions of pajamas, where for us, we're not selling that many. And so we were able to get, a few hundred or 1,000 of them. And they probably saw the success of a lot of the online retailers with that. And they said, all right, we're going to have our ducks in a row and do really well come the next Christmas.
I think that a big effect that I'm seeing other companies have, I was actually talking to Nick the other day about this, that so many people wish they could go viral, and we have had that experience of going viral. And from my perspective, someone who has gone viral, is it's not as great as you think it's going to be. Obviously, it's great because you get in front of a bunch of people, they come buy stuff, you have a ton of sales. But if you are a handmade business like us and you're not equipped for it, even if you're not, you probably don't have enough inventory because you weren't predicting to, I don't even know, 10 times, 20 times that specific product. So if you go and buy way more units of this product, or you have to figure a way to make way more units of this product and that doesn't go viral again and those people are no longer there and the demand's not there, then you spend all this money or all this time into this inventory that now you can't sell. And so, you know, you have to think about those things. And I feel like the pandemic also affected a lot of businesses in that way because we weren't the only people to exponentially grow during the pandemic. A ton of people did. And so they had to hire a ton of people or get a ton of inventory. And now that it's starting to slow down, I think a lot of businesses are seeing those effects of how are we going to keep up? And, you know, you never want to go backwards on your numbers. So all these businesses are like, we need to match this. We need to match this. And I don't know that that was the new normal. And we might be going back to what the old normal was just as a society as a whole. And now these businesses don't know what to do because they want to do more and more. And that might not be a thing anymore.
Yeah, it was an abnormality where just you had this massive, massive growth and spike. I think a great example of that is you remember how hot the Pelotons were?
Yes, exactly.
Everyone wanted a Peloton. And I know, like, if you read Peloton's story, they were literally could not keep stock. The bikes were going so fast. The company was making so much money. And of course, when that's happening as a company, you say, all right, well, we need to make more bikes, you know, hire more people, do all this stuff. And they did that. And then it seemed like overnight, everyone had a Peloton and no one was buying Pelotons anymore. But now they had hired all those people, built all these bikes, and they couldn't sell them, not at the rate that they were before. And Peloton almost went bankrupt.
That's crazy.
Who knows? Possibly they might even have. I don't know. But it's that is a very similar story across so many different companies, I feel like, during this time. And basically what you're saying is going viral or just having anything that causes massive growth, if you're not careful, can actually be kind of a problem.
But then also on the other hand is like when you have an opportunity, you need to run with it. And so you have to find the perfect balance, which is nearly impossible. So you kind of just have to go with the flow and figure it out as you go. Because if these companies wouldn't have grown or gotten more inventory or tried to I don't know what word I'm looking for, like expand
yeah,
when they had the opportunity, then they would have never been where they are now. So you got to find the perfect balance, because if you go overboard, then you're going to go bankrupt and you're going to end up going like way backwards and bad things will happen. But if you can find the perfect balance, then you run with the opportunities, but then you don't go overboard and don't end up like screwing yourself in the end.
I think it's like a very hard, like, psychological thing. I don't know if it's like really greed, but like we all want to be like, when things are going well, you're like, a lot of us, it's very easy to be optimistic and say, I think this will continue. But how do you know when it's going to continue versus when it won't? I think that's a very good lesson to have learned, I think, for us.
Yeah, but then like I'm saying, if we wouldn't have tried to, you know, grow and take those opportunities that we had at that time, like we could be nowhere, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a tough thing.
When we started our business, everyone was like, well, you're not guaranteed your job or success. And how do you know this is going to work? And what is the business plan? And no one really believed in us. And I think the pandemic quickly showed us that that doesn't matter, because no one is guaranteed their job. And so for some reason, a lot of people just think that when you own your own business, it's different than when you work for a different business. When you look at how many people were furloughed or laid off when the pandemic happened, and they never would have expected that. And the main thing is just like, nothing is guaranteed. So you might as well do what you think is best for you in your life and make the best decisions. And also, I think like so many people have this confidence in themselves, which is great, of like, I'm great at my job, or I hit these numbers, when at the end of the day, if there's not money to pay you, or there, you know, unforeseen circumstances happen, you know, you're not guaranteed your job at the end of the day, because if there's no money or there's no position, then, you know, the company can't keep you there.
Yeah, I think there's this idea of you have this blanket of security, maybe.
Yes,
at like
job security.
like this blanket of job security at these bigger companies. And I would say overall, you probably do have a more secure job than on your own. That's not like there's no, like there's a reason people think that.
And while you're there, you have guaranteed money. Unlike us, like if no one bought anything today, then we didn't have any sales. Where like if you go to your desk job, you know you're getting a paycheck that day.
Right. I mean, I guess maybe kind of an in between would be somebody that works on commissions.
Yeah.
So those people, will experience more pay fluctuations. But I think at the end of the day, what you're saying is that you can lose your job no matter what, whether you're an entrepreneur, somebody that works on commissions, or truly have like a salaried desk job. And so because of that, you might as well go after some of your dreams if there, is something that you want to chase.
Yeah.
Don't just stay in a job just because, I have the job security necessarily.
And I think it gave us that confidence, like everyone was saying about job security for us when we were taking the leap to do our own thing. And now all of a sudden this thing happens, and it just was a proven thing to us that it doesn't matter what job you're in, because no one has that job security that you think you do.
Well, when we kind of made that leap, this is a little bit earlier than getting in the office, kind of like when we started to do our own thing with Tails Up Pub. I kind of had this idea, and Danny and I had this conversation, was like, we can either go back or get different jobs. We had quit our jobs, and so there's a whole story that goes along with that, which I won't get into, but we could either find different jobs and like in a corporate setting, or we could go start our own business. And if we start our own business, I thought if it fails, that'll be a very cool story to tell. You can always go find another job, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You can always go, get a 9-to-5 somewhere. There's very few times that you have an opportunity where kind of all the stars align to where you can actually go out and try to start your own thing.
I also think that along those lines, the pandemic showed that like nothing in life is guaranteed, and you think you can have this wedding on this date, and all of a sudden someone tells you that you can't get married, and it's just crazy that something can happen in a blink of an eye and everything changes. And I think that that's going to shape our society as a whole in the long term. Well, when masks came out, everyone was like, oh my gosh, we're going to be wearing masks for the rest of our life. This would never go away. And it already did for a lot of places and things. And it's crazy that, something happens and you think that it's going to change forever. But I think that the effects of society and how we think and how we act and probably how we hoard things will be affected the long term.
Well, speaking of hoarding, I know from a business standpoint, we definitely hoarded fabric and things like that, and the elastic, a lot of the stuff that was scarce we hoarded for a long time, just because we're like, wow, we couldn't get black and navy fabric for so long, so when it finally came out, we always overbought, I felt like.
And I wonder like how many people have way more toilet paper in their pantry than or not pantry, but wherever they keep it, more on hand than they used to, because I feel like back in the day you'd have like, a few rolls left and you'd be like, okay, we need to buy some more. But now do they have like cases before they I bet people are scared. And same thing with like food stashes. Like if you are afraid that you wouldn't be able to get fresh water or like canned food, I bet people have more of that than they used to.
It is very interesting that these like big events really shape people, and sometimes this stuff lasts for years, if not decades. I mean, I know that this is different because it's a pandemic, but the effects of the Great Depression, those lasted on that generation, a lot of them till they died. And so I wonder, are we going to be the old people one day or whatever, that it's like our grandkids are like, why do you have so much toilet paper? And at this point we've almost even, it's subconscious, you're not even knowing why. It's like way back when you couldn't get it, but like to someone younger, it's like that makes no sense.
Yeah, I feel like we will be like that.
Yeah, these things last, and like, I don't know, it's a psychological thing. It's the scarcity. We really, and that's probably a good adaptive thing of like people, right? And so if you have this bad event happen to you, what helps you make sure that you're not going to get stuck in a bad situation in the future? You learn from the event. I learned that, toilet paper can go away and can be scarce. That's not life or death, but it's certainly nice to have. And so you don't want that to happen to you again. So you make sure you always have a little extra.
I actually wonder how much the toilet paper thing was, how few there actually was. Like we never weren't able to get it. You and I.
No.
So I wonder like how low was the demand for certain people. Like I don't know anyone who like literally couldn't wipe because they didn't have any.
I don't really know if it was the supply that was low. I feel like it was the run on the bank mentality. Like I gotta get it because I don't know when I'm gonna be able to get it next.
Yeah, that's very true.
Another thing that's really funny during the pandemic is like it's so crazy how like everyone moved from different states. So like I know like California seemed to like lose a ton of people, and it seems like everyone from California moved to like Austin, Texas.
I feel like it's because like in those congested areas, like everyone became germaphobes and they don't want to be within 6 feet of anyone else. And so if you live somewhere more remote, then you don't have to worry about it as much. And like New York City is so congested, and I bet those people really, couldn't get their hands on a lot of supplies because there's so many people in a condensed place and there's like no room to do anything. So a lot of people did move, and that's wild.
Well, and like we talked about, it's crazy state by state, the restrictions and laws were different.
Yeah.
Like in Georgia, way less strict. It seems like Texas is probably a lot less strict. So if you're living in California or New York, where the restrictions were a lot worse, you may be like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of not being able to go out. And I think that's another reason people moved.
Another effect that we're seeing too from, I think it was gonna happen regardless, but I think the pandemic like made it happen faster. When we started our business, our accountant was telling us about sales tax and how it works if you're an online business. And so at the time that we started our business, we only had to pay sales tax on orders that were placed in our state. And she told us, this is going to change because as online grows, there's going to be like everyone wants their piece of money basically. And so we were like, okay, we were aware that was going to happen at some point, but it was like pretty quickly, like now that the pandemic was allowing a lot of people to online shop and like our sales grew exponentially. We know a lot of other online businesses did as well. Now we have to pay sales tax in a ton of states. And it's crazy that, those rules and regulations changed so quickly because the sales were going up.
Yeah, it was so much stuff was happening so fast, and I wonder, like you said, how long would that have taken to go into effect if it wasn't for like the massive increase in e-commerce sales.
This is kind of random, but I feel like I heard someone talking about this the other day. Like we grew up going to malls, and then malls were dead long before the pandemic, I think, at least for me.
They were dying.
And so, but people, especially like our parents and stuff, were like, malls are necessary. You have to be able to go try things on and like all this stuff. But I saw this influencer be like, oh, I'm going to the mall today. And I literally have never thought about going to the mall. Ever. I used to love the mall, but now going to the mall isn't even an option for me. Like I didn't even think malls were here anymore. Like I thought they were completely gone, but I wonder now, like did the pandemic affect them, or are people going the opposite direction? Like I want a mall, and will malls make a comeback?
Well, I definitely feel like there is some of that. Like you have the pendulum swung so much for like the online things like that, and I do wonder, is it going to swing back further than the normal before? Are people going to be more wanting to go to in-person things like the mall and that type of stuff? We definitely seem to see that with travel. I mean, people put off traveling for so long, and it's like everybody probably traveled more than they would have if they had gone just normally along. It's like because it was people were waiting so long to do stuff. It was like people just went bananas when they finally could travel.
Yeah, and like for us, we like going back to like the mall idea, like we opened our store to be a storefront, and we kind of ended up doing that a little bit, but never really opened a store. And because our online grew so much, we never put the efforts into the store, even though that was the main goal in the beginning. And so for us, like it changed. I just wonder how many other people were affected by retail. How many people closed their retail shops to do online and now have kept it that way? Or how many people went back to doing retail?
Well, we debated that. We debated once things kind of settled down. Should we try to open up the retail store? It just, for us, like, there's a lot of other headaches that come along with the retail, particularly us being a handmade. Like we're more of a manufacturing, making bandanas and that type of stuff. We weren't really set up as much to do retail anyways.
And then in my opinion, like some of our local boutiques, they didn't really even go online. I don't know what they did to stay alive in that time, but now even still, they're fully retail and don't have an online presence. And for me, I'm like, that's wild. Why would you not also try to, but it's probably the same thing. For us, we don't want to do retail because of all the headaches it involves. And then they're probably like, they don't want to do online because of all the headaches involved. If you can do it all and do it all well, then you make even more money and you're very successful. But the problem is it's hard to do everything and do everything well.
No, that is very true.
And I think that's why we, don't dip our toe in cats and like any other animals. Is like the more you spread yourself out, the harder it is to be good at what you do. You got to pick something and be good at that. And then maybe you can expand if you want to, or you could just stay doing that thing and do it well.
So do you anticipate any other major changes coming from as we've moved out of the COVID era, or do you think we're fully back to kind of normal?
I think now more than ever, we're seeing the long lasting effects of the pandemic. I think that people are now, the economy is changing. People are holding on to their money. And there was a lot of government assistance, and people who were furloughed, still had money coming to them, and all these things that they weren't used to happening were happening. And now it's going back not only to a new normal, but almost even, what we thought was going to happen when the pandemic first happened in 2020, I feel like is how it's starting to feel now.
You mean like when, everyone is like, a recession is coming and it's like going to be bad, all this type of stuff. And it seemed like the stock market just continued to go up and most people were doing, at least outwardly, seem to be doing better.
Yeah, I think no one really batted an eye at spending money and buying things in 2020. And maybe it had to do with finding happiness. And, when you spend money, it makes you happy. And when you get these new things, it makes you happy. But now people are starting to get afraid of, what if I don't have enough money, or I need to start saving. Also, just everything's more expensive now, and buying a house and even groceries are more expensive. And so people are holding on to their money in a different way. And that's really going to affect small businesses like us, but even big businesses that, we follow, we're seeing them struggle too.
Yeah, with all that spending and government assistance, inflation started to go up, and now we're having to combat that, and that's one of the reasons why the prices have gone up so much. As you see all this record inflation, it's like, wow, that's the price of bread is almost doubled in like a few years.
And I don't know what the future holds. If I did, then I would probably be a millionaire because I could make all the right choices. I don't know, and that's what's hard. It's like now we are feeling that unknown of what's going to happen, and what can we do as a business to pivot and stay involved and stay alive, because a lot of people are starting to go out of business. A lot of boutiques I follow have gone out of business in the past few months, and so we can see it happening to other people. We don't want to let it happen to us. So what can we be doing to not let that happen? I don't really know what the answer is, but that's what we're trying to figure out now. And I think that that's where we are at, mid to early 2024 is game planning for the future and not having the answers and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, business is so difficult, and just life in general when you're dealing with all this uncertainty, but you still have to make decisions.
Like I said, social media usage is down, and I also think that what people want to see is different. So many people that I follow are saying, influencer era is over. They don't enjoy watching these influencers because they're not who they used to be. It used to be just like a girl in her house, like living her life. And now it's all these like fancy bougie people with like unattainable lifestyles. It's hard to find someone that you can relate to. And so people aren't finding joy in following influencers or watching things online. And so I don't know what they're choosing to do with their time now instead, but they're not spending nearly as much time on social media. And as a business who fully runs from social media, I don't know. We have to pivot in some way, and we got to figure that part out too.
All I know is Tales Up Pub is going to do its best to adapt to the new times and pivot in the ways that we can. Hopefully we make the right decisions. And I think the other big thing is, when you make mistakes, try not to make mistakes that are going to knock you out of the game.
And being authentic to who we are and what we believe in. We'll never look back and regret our decisions if we stay true to our values and like who we are. Like I said, people aren't wanting to follow these influencers because they're not relatable anymore. It's like, well, if I'm being who I truly am, then that's all I can be. I can look back and say, well, I did my best, and I wasn't lying. I wasn't inauthentic. Like, this is us. We're just showing our life and behind the scenes of our business, and it's changing for us because we're growing our family and we're having a baby, and all these changes are happening at once. So it's kind of crazy. And I feel like our values and what we believe in do change over time because you have different things that are important to you at different stages in life, and we just have to navigate that.
And it's not easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, but
Not
nothing in business is easy.
No. And if it was, I probably would it be as fun?
I love owning a business because we get to live the most fun life together. We're building this together, but it also is very stressful. And times like this where there's so much unknown, you don't know what to do to be successful or to grow and continue like this business journey. It's scary and we have to figure it out, but at least we have each other. It'd be way worse if we were on our own and had to do it, solo. So we're very lucky to have two brains to put together and try to figure it out.
There are some benefits, though. That's funny. I'm thinking that when we started out during COVID, we were a little bit naive, and I think that we didn't really know all the different ways that things could go. Now we have that experience, so in some ways it feels. You would think that COVID time would have been actually more stressful and things like that, but I actually feel like more stressed now than I did when COVID was happening. But I think that's because I didn't know what I didn't know back then. Now I know. I know all the crazy things that can happen. I know the mistakes that can be made, the mistakes that we have made. And it's just like, I don't know, that knowledge is kind of like the curse of knowledge. Like, this could go really bad in lots of different ways.
I also think it's important to, the saying, not have all your eggs in one basket. And for us, we have done our best to, have our core, but then have our eggs around it by doing our podcast, YouTube, it's all related to Tails Up Pup, but it's not like we're not literally just selling a bandana and that's it. We have all these different products, and now Simply Sweet Pea, having different things from different avenues allows you to, not go down when everything is going down because you don't have all your eggs in one basket.
And the things that are doing well to kind of catch that wave and ride it, because sometimes you don't, like, just like 2020, you couldn't have known that it was going to do that, but if you were riding the wave, the wave got bigger and bigger and bigger, and you got to ride with it.
Ooh, you're a surfer now.
Well, is there anything else about the pandemic and kind of that whole process that you wanted to talk about today? I feel like we've covered a lot.
I think overall, it is very stressful, and there's so many unknowns today. But if I could go back and do it all again, I still would, because like you said, we rode the wave, we took the ride, we went with the opportunities that we were given at that time, and I'm glad that we did. And I think that we've grown something really cool. I'm proud of what we've grown and what we've accomplished, and
we learned so much in the process.
We really have learned so much. So I am excited for the future and also nervous because we don't know what's happening in the world right now, but we're just doing our best, and that's the best that we can do. If you have been here, if you found us in the pandemic, if you've been here before the pandemic, it is so cool to hear when you found us, how you found us.
The OG Tup family.
It's just really cool to hear everyone's story. So if you are feeling inclined, send me a message and let me know, how you found us, when you found us. And I don't know, I love hearing all the stories. So definitely do that. Give this video a thumbs up if you're watching, or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And we love each and every one of you, because we would not have been able to go on this ride without you guys.
Yes.
So.
And the Tails Up Pup family is so strong. We are so grateful for every single one of you, and we're excited for the future. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.